Good afternoon, folks. How are you doing? Today is Tuesday, the 8th day of August 2023. It's late today. I didn't make a video this morning. I had, it's 5. I had a doctor appointment, and then I had to deal with some stuff, filing some stuff for the court. It's not me. They signed me up for jury duty. So everyone's trying to weasel out of it. But I have a legitimate thing, so I had to deal with that. I needed to make this video just very quickly so you could see it and evaluate it. This is from Australians versus the Agenda. It's a YouTube channel. I'm surprised it hasn't been pulled down. They only got 10,000 subs. It might be pulled down by YouTube soon. But I wanted you to see it and think about it in relation to what we've been talking about in terms of this, I believe, still an ongoing attack on the middle class. Just as a reminder, before you watch it, we talked the other day about this. This was from the World Health Organization. These are the graphs, the end of 2021, going into 2022 for the first year plus of the Rona. And these are the numbers in terms of what they themselves published on their own fucking website in terms of excess mortality rates versus COVID mortality rates. The gray are COVID mortality rates. The red line are the excess mortality rates. As you can see, the lower middle income and the upper middle income, the excess mortality rates vastly exceeded the COVID-19 mortality rates. However, the high income, they were exactly the same. It's as if something was killing people during that time that may have been associated with COVID-19, but wasn't COVID-19. I also had us look at this breakdown of this chart here. Let me get to that real quick. I should have brought that up before. I know you're here to see this video, but I wanted you to see this. Two things were painfully obvious when looking at their chart there. I think that's this one. My eyes are so bad I can't tell. Yes. This is that chart that came right off of their page. And this is the excess mortality rate, real time, globally, versus the reported COVID-19 deaths. And you can see when the spikes occur. This is the mRNA rollouts, and this, of course, is the beginning of the lockdowns and the mandates. Mandated lockdowns, mandated closings, mandated masks, mandated social distancing, homeschooling, depression, anxiety, drug addiction, drug overdoses, suicides, domestic disputes. The mortality rate was through the chart, through the roof here, after these mandates took place. And then, of course, in come the mRNA rollouts, and the first thing we see is that. Now, all that said, I want to share with you this video from these individuals. Again, I'll post a link to this down below. That's that chart right there, but you can't get a bigger view of it, so I had to blow it up. And we'll talk about it briefly afterwards. Have a listen. Australians versus the Agenda.
You have repeatedly refused to provide evidence. You've dodged questions on evidence from Senator Canavan, from Senator Rennick. You have relied instead on appeals to authority and other logical fallacies, including an appeal to authority. So let's talk about one of your experts. The health minister, the former health minister in this country, said, "We are engaged in the world's largest clinical vaccination trial."
The world doesn't know that answer. The world is engaged in the largest clinical trial, the largest global vaccination trial ever.
Absolutely. It is an experiment. We've talked about that before. I showed you the thing from the New York Times, the article from the New York Times talking about we're on the cusp of this brand new revolutionary fucking threshold in medicine using this fucking trial and the data from this trial. And obviously, I've also talked about the epigenetic reprogramming of aging. That there's something even more sinister that goes to that, and it shows you, and it will explain, I believe, it goes to explain this. Have a listen.
It's experimental in his view. He was the health minister that introduced these things. Let's go to the first question. Does Pfizer have COVID vaccine mandates for your own employees in Australia?
At the height of the pandemic and consistent with guidance from health authorities, from the New South Wales and Victorian governments, Pfizer did have a colleague vaccination program for its employees.
Do you still have it?
That vaccine, the requirement for colleague vaccination.
He couldn't bring himself to say mandate. He's got to call it a requirement. The colleague vaccine mandate is what it was, not colic. Colleague vaccine mandate. They did have a mandate for Pfizer employees to get the fucking jabs, but that's not what's interesting here. Notice, of course, he couldn't say mandate. He's got to go mandate requirement.
For Pfizer employees is currently present. We introduced a colleague vaccination program in the interest of protecting the health and safety of our colleagues and
Corporate
the communities
speak.
in which we serve, in which we operate.
We've read that your vaccine mandate was using your own batch of vaccine especially imported for Pfizer, which was not tested by the TGA.
That's an important word, batch.
Is that correct?
Senator, so Pfizer undertook to import a batch of vaccine specifically for the employee vaccination program, and that was so that no vaccine would be taken from government stocks that was being delivered to clinics as needed.
Did you hear that? He just admitted they brought in a special batch. Oh my God. A special batch of vaccines for their employees.
Your vaccine mandate was using your own batch of vaccine especially imported for Pfizer, which was not tested by the TGA. Is that correct?
Senator, so Pfizer undertook to import a batch of vaccine specifically for the employee vaccination program, and that was so that no vaccine would be taken from government stocks that was being delivered to clinics as needed.
They had their own special batch, and the word batch is important. It wasn't their own special lot. They didn't bring in an additional lot. They didn't bring in additional numbers, additional vaccine supply, which is what you would expect for them to do if they were forced. Everybody else was being forced under mandates by their employers, and the mandates that were imposed in fucking Australia. You would expect that they would just take the same things everybody else, but no, they didn't. They didn't. And they felt very... The corporate speak, the corporate jargon, batch is an important word. Batch is an important word. It means it was made differently than the stuff that was being given to other people. The other people in that case, Australia. I get the feeling that was what was happening across the globe, across the westernized world, wherever they had a deal with, like Israel, for instance, when Bibi Netanyahu offered up the whole of fucking Israel as a laboratory, his own words, to Pfizer, early to get the fucking jabs in there, giving them Pfizer access to their medical records and their universal medical care information system. Clearly, I wonder if they had a certain batch that they brought in, not just for Pfizer employees there, but also maybe for, I don't know, government officials there. A special batch brought in for, I don't know, various CEOs of companies. A special batch brought in for wealthy people to go to certain clinics. Notice he said the batch went to certain clinics. They were told that they could go to certain clinics to get this mRNA jab, their COVID-19 vaccine, but they had to go to certain clinics to get them, and they would give them to them. They'd have a certain batch set aside just for the fucking employees. I wonder if that was the case for, well, I don't know. Let's look again at these numbers. Why is it that the high-income people in this fucking study, when compared to the upper middle income and the lower middle income, the upper middle class and the lower middle class, the middle class, why is it the high-income people, their fucking excess mortality during the numbers during the 2.6 million, the numbers during that fucking period, why is it that theirs sticks right exactly with the deaths from COVID-19? Hang on one second, would you? I don't know. Hang on one second, would you?
Okay.
Anyway, that's that. I got a phone call, clearly, so they were given, the Pfizer employees were given their own special batch of fucking vaccine. It wasn't the same thing. They were testing on everybody else in Australia. And my guess is it's not just Pfizer that was treated that way. If you go and look at the World Health Organization website, which I'll link to down below, you'll see the high income people, their excess mortality rate was exactly the same as all the COVID-19. So they didn't have any excess mortality rate. But during the fucking vaccines and the jabs, the middle class and the upper middle class and the lower middle class were off the charts. I wonder why. Thank you for your time.